Hello, YouTube family. How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Love Is. I'm your guy Tim, my beautiful wife Christina.
Hey,
Yeah, today we're going to be talking about a touchy subject, something that everybody has either one time dealt with, or if you keep living, you eventually will deal with it. We're going to be talking about grief, the harmful effects of grief. We're going to be talking about the 5 stages of grief. My beautiful therapist wife here, she's a little more educated on grief. So, but we're just going to be talking about our particular dealings with grief.
I want to call myself a therapist, not anymore. Call myself a consultant or relational consultant. Why? Because, but I do have a lot of experience. For some reason, I would always get the clients that had grief. And here we go. So,
Yeah.
babe, what are the stages of grief?
Well, you got 5 stages. We'll go one at a time.
Okay.
We'll start with the denial. When say someone passed away or one of your loved ones is gone and you just can't believe it happened. You just can't believe it. You can't believe it. Even when you see them in the casket or whatnot, you still don't want to believe that it's true. That is denial.
You even call them on the phone, still see if the voicemail still. I remember one of my cousins, I kept that number. I could probably even say most of that number still. And I would just listen to the voicemail until the voicemail was finished.
Yeah, I actually did the same thing with my mom. When my mom passed away, I would call her phone just to hear her voicemail, just to hear it. I had to almost every day I did it. Wow. Just couldn't believe it. Still can't believe it. I still would say, at some days I'd be still in denial, you know.
Okay.
The next stage would be anger.
Mm-hmm. Or let's say at the funeral, it wasn't what you expected. Maybe they didn't look like themselves. Maybe something got done within the services that you didn't like.
It's a good one.
A lot of people get upset about that when, or they're like, that's not what my mom wanted, what my sister wanted, what whoever wanted, but they're not here. So it'll never be exactly what they wanted because they're not here, and people are trying to maybe do their own thing or trying to carry out their thing and everything in the middle when it comes to a funeral or some type of service for the person that has transcended.
I agree. I agree. You're talking to one guy that knows funerals, that knows about grieving your relatives. I've lost a mother, I lost a father, I lost a sister, I've lost a brother, uncles. So I know a lot about grief, and I know exactly what you're talking about because I don't want to say which one, but one of my parents say that one of my parents they didn't look like they should in their casket. And I remember I had a couple of cousins and relatives that really got mad at the funeral directors. They wanted to fight them and all this and all that. So I understand exactly what you're talking about.
Oh
That
yeah,
is so true.
we're going off the rip. So we didn't rehearse this. We didn't do anything. We're not, I'm not even coming with clinical knowledge that I know other than the stages of grief and my experiences working personally and then my experiences working with clientele. Because when you do that, you kind of water it down and you miss the real of it. And you need to get the raw and the real of it. So maybe you could deal with it differently or know that you are not alone.
You're not alone. Trust me.
No,
You're not alone. Not
we've
at all.
we've all been through it. He's talking about a parent, and I could even say it because it is what it is. I was young, but my grandfather, I did not like how he looked in his casket. We had it in the island of Trinidad and Tobago, and particularly his face was like not his face. Why? Because they forgot to put in his dentures. So it was like his face was caved in. I could think of another family member. I didn't even know it was her because of how she looked. So that plays a huge part in the grief process if they don't look the same. Even the last previous funeral I went to, she did not look like herself. And it hurts even more when you can't have that memory. So for what I usually do, I can only think of one funeral that they actually looked like themselves. But what I usually do is just not even go to the casket because you don't want that to be your last burning memory of your loved one.
I can tell you an instance where the person looked okay, you know, they still look dead. Of course, they were dead, but my oldest brother, Larry, he was 6'9", 240. And he looked it okay in his casket, but we found out that they had to break his legs to put him in the casket. All hell broke loose then. There was so many angry people about that. You know, of course he didn't feel it because you know you can't feel nothing when you're gone, but it was just the fact that we knew that they had to actually break his legs to get him in the casket. We like, don't y'all make bigger caskets? Can't y'all custom make a casket? The University of Arkansas, where he went to school, they paid for the service, so they could have broke his legs. I mean, didn't have to break his legs. They could have just put him in a different casket. So we was mad. I was mad about that. I was very mad.
And funerals can get pricey.
Oh yeah.
Pricey, pricey, pricey.
Yeah, he had two funerals. He had one in Arkansas at the school he went to, and he also had one in Columbia, Tennessee. I'll be right back, folks. I got a dog back here. He's shaking some stuff. I'll be right back. Keep going.
Yeah, grief is something else. You're angry. Maybe the person was taken away before their time in a car accident, in a murder, in a drowning. So many reasons why that could be the case. So anger is just a part of the stages. What's the next one?
Oh yeah, next one is bargaining. Can you give me an example of bargaining?
So many people, well, take me instead. A lot of people say that, or I'll do this better if you bring them back, or I should have done this, and maybe if I did this, it would have been different. They think they can use luck and all these other things and the fork blowers, especially in our community, to bring them back, but they're not coming back in the physical. And that, let's say, as mom, as my belief.
Exactly. And it also could be like, say, with a job. Say, because job is grief too. If you lose a job, you're grieving. Mm-hmm. So say you went to work and instead of doing this, you could have did this and you got fired. Mm-hmm. And you like, man, if I could have just went that route, I wouldn't have gotten fired.
Right. I wouldn't have gotten fired. It could be the grief of me per se. Personally, you know, having autoimmune disease, I'm not out in the field like I used to. I might do small things, but nothing compared to what I used to do 60 hours a week. I'm thankful that I'm not on that level. But knowing that I won't be doing that purpose the way it was before, that was a level of grief that I had to contend with and be okay with after a while. And it takes time. And it still comes back because most of my friends are therapists. So they tell me what's going on. Some of it might be great, some of it might not be great, but the point is, it's still grief.
Yeah.
What are some other griefs?
What some other grief like
relationships?
Oh yeah, relationships.
Divorce, friends.
Even your car break down. Car could break down. You could be in grief with the motor go out. Motor go out, you lost the whole car.
Yeah, and you have to pay for it or get a new one.
Or if you don't have the money to pay for it, you're really gonna be grieving. Mm-hmm. Definitely.
You know one that is a light level of grief, because we have to not just think about death when we think of grief. When this dog, your dog, Milo, tore up my cord, you remember that?
Oh yeah.
I was heated.
The kind of cord that you have to get specially ordered.
I was upset. I really was upset. And I still think about that cord and what it worked for. So I'm like, man, let me not say it worked for, because people are going to think the wrong thing. It was a special light that I had, and he tore it up. He was a baby, so he just tore up the wire. So yeah, anything is grief. Anything is grief.
We got another stage is depression. Mm-hmm. That's all the grief building up, where it gets you to the point where you don't want to move, don't want to go to work, don't want to talk to nobody, don't want to eat. Something I've dealt with. I've been in depression. Depression is something you don't want to be in, but it's something that's normal and it's not okay, but it's a way you can work through it with help.
With help. I believe that you need to, if you get to the point, and this is in my profession, I would say, if you get to the point where you cannot complete your daily functions, getting out of bed to go to work, uh, speak to your children, deal with your children. If you're isolating, if you're drinking the pain away, the hurt, the anger, the denial away, if you're doing those things where it's affecting your daily living, therapeutically, professionally, that's when I would step in and say you need to go see a person that specializes in grief or a person that just specializes in mental health.
Exactly, exactly. And that's another thing that denial can take place too. Denial, it can be denying that you are actually depressed
And you need help.
and you need help. That's the hardest thing about depression is admitting that you need help.
And
Because, go ahead, man.
no, I was just going to say, think of all the people that are walking around, driving all over the place that are depressed
Right.
because of grief.
Because there's a stigmatism that people think that if you see a counselor or see a therapist that you're actually crazy, which is total BS.
Total BS. And I know in our community, it's getting better, but it's still a challenge. I could think of a client, and I mean, from 0 to 99, I really dealt with 0 to 99 when it came to ages. He had to be, I want to say like 70 something, 80 something. And he was talking about his mom, and his mom passed 20 years ago. And I had to tell him, like, you can't drink in the session. That's how crazy it was and how hurtful it was for him that he would drink and smoke in a session. I used to do a lot of in-home therapy. So in that aspect, he was drinking and smoking and still crying 20 years later. That's why it's so important to get the help, get some tools, get some coping skills so you can deal with that. Because when we talked about bargaining, you can't bring them back.
No. And that brings us, that's perfect what you just said, because that brings us to our last stage, and that's acceptance. Once I finally accepted that, I ain't God, that I don't make the rules, uh, they're gone, you know. But once I accepted the fact that my mom's no longer suffering, she's no longer in pain, she don't have to worry no more, and I'll see her again one day.
Okay.
Once I accepted that,
Mm-hmm.
it was a lot better for me personally.
And that's, everybody has their way of justifying their acceptance. But bigger than that, I'm sure a lot of the audience will ask, well, what do you do in the midst of it? How do you deal with it year in, year out? Holidays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Indigenous, if we want to go there and be conscious. How do you deal with it? What do you do?
Well, me, I think about the good moments that we shared. I think about the things that she taught me, and I realized that if I want to impress her or make her proud of me, then I need to do the right thing, and whatever it takes to do the right thing, because there's nothing wrong with doing the right thing. The society has normalized doing wrong, which is not okay. But once when I get really, really upset, and matter of fact, I cry.
Mm-hmm.
If I feel like I need to cry, if it's on me like that, I cry. And after I cry, I feel better. It's okay to cry.
It's definitely okay to cry. Another thing that maybe someone can do is find a way or something that can represent them that you can look towards to say, yes, this is my mom, my sibling, whoever that passed away, should make you think of the happy feelings.
Right.
Bring back their memory through the things that they have done. So I can think of things like Timmy used to say, oh, my mom used to garden and you make me think of my mom. And I know that's a warm feeling inside for him to think about that. What about if the person liked to barbecue and every birthday you barbecue for them?
Right.
Or maybe on their birthday you have a little cake or something. What about going not back and forth, but who has the best memory? That was one that I learned years ago from a supervisor. We called it one up, where you'll tell me a memory, and let's say it's your sister or your other brother, and you guys say all the memories, and whoever's memory is the best wins.
Right.
And it really brings back. I remember I did this with a client and his mom. His father had passed away of a blood disease, and he did not tell them that he had this disease. That we're talking about him, talking about, and I'm just listening, and I could feel the feeling, the energy of that person in the room, and they said they felt it too. And I never saw the person's face, but then they showed me a picture. Like I said, I don't know what my purpose of having all these clients that had somebody that had grief. Maybe it was just my understanding and me being okay at such a young age of my grandfather passing away, and I felt he was very important to me, a friend passing away when I was a teenager, and so on and so forth. Maybe that helped me find a way to deal with it spiritually, mentally, physically than some others, because not everybody can handle grief as easy. What about another solution that you can maybe think of?
Another solution is,
Or maybe
like,
personally?
no, like you said, spiritual. You know, God can do things that we can't do. So sometimes we have to, you know, trust and know that He don't make mistakes. So everything happens for a reason. And
Mhm.
and what I started doing, I started honoring my mother and my father and my sister and my brother. I honor them. You know, I always write, like, I can't say that because we on the thing. I was about to say something about my passwords and stuff, but I'm not gonna do that.
Okay.
But anyway, I honor them, you know, in any way I can. I try my best to honor them because I don't want to forget them. I'm not going to forget them. You know, we're not asking anybody to forget anybody. We want you to remember, but I'm sure the good times should outweigh the bad times. You know.
And sometimes you just have to change focus. And you do have to just have to be a little, some people might say a little delirious in your head to look at things in a certain way. Think of maybe, for example, me. Grief is also miscarrying. I miscarried a couple times. I could have had a couple more kids running around here, but I only have one. And I have to justify with the Most High and say, well, I was only supposed to have, if I had more than one with the health changes I had in my life, I would not be here. I want to be able to maintain the relationship I have with my son, be able to show my son what I'm showing him, and to put him in places and spaces that he would never be if I wasn't his mom. So sometimes you have to find a way to change focus, as we would say, change perspective and justify, so you can be okay with maybe that child not being there, or maybe having a deeper connection with maybe a relationship that needed to be done. So it's so many ways to look at it, and you have to find your way that works for you. Not everything is the same keyhole to get through to your destiny of letting go or accepting. But also in the same breath, which is so important, is that it comes and goes. It's not it's not that you can't be healed, but it will come where if I smell certain things, or when Thanksgiving comes around, I think of going to my cousin's house, and she always made what does she make? Regular Americans call it stuffing, but what's the other word?
Dressing.
Dressing.
Yeah.
So
Cornbread dressing.
right. My cousin always made cornbread dressing. And for many, many years after she passed, I would always make cornbread dressing. And that was my way of paying homage to her in some kind of way, because she was that important in my life.
Then you guys see why I married her. She's awesome because
No.
she's awesome because I'm still figuring it out. I'm not totally there yet. You know, I'm still figuring out how to live, you know, with all the grief that I've had in my life. You know, and the past 4 or 5 years with her, it's been amazing because she's taught me a lot and we've learned a lot together. And she's been in the fire with me, standing right by me, going through it. So I love you. You're so smart.
Whatever. What I would also say is inspire others. Your story might inspire someone. I could think of when I worked in a jail, and it was a child that didn't deal with, and I could say this because I'm not saying his name, but he wanted to go to some church activity for teens. And his sister didn't want to go. His grandparents didn't really want to take him, but he begged and begged and begged. So he had that as his grief. His sister passed. When he woke up and he had severe challenges, when he woke up and asked for his sister wasn't there. So the first thing I asked him to do was draw. He was a great artist. I had him draw a picture of his sister. Beautiful. And I can think of another client where I told him to talk about it. When you know you're okay with it, you can talk about it freely. It won't bother you. It won't make you feel any kind of bad feelings with it. You can talk about it because now it's time for you to inspire. I believe everything is done on purpose. Everything should be done with purpose. So when I talk even to my son, walk with purpose, do this with purpose, do this with purpose, it's for a reason. You don't know who you might be inspiring by the little things that you do and how you deal with the crazy things in life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One thing that always, bothered me, I say I was probably 6 or 7. My grandfather, he was in the hospital. He had swelling on his brain or what. Really, I was young, so I really don't know if he had cancer or what. I don't know. But I do remember me and my mom and sisters. We went to the hospital and seen he was not all the way there and whatnot. So we left and said we were going to come back. So we left, but I had left something in the room, a toy or something. So I go back into the room to get my toy from where he was, and he woke up and he said, "Come here, grandson, I want to tell you something." Me, 6'7", I was startled. I really didn't know. So I went out the door and said, "Mama, he's woke." When and got her, we come back in the room and he was gone. He was dead. So all my life, I always wondered, what did he have to tell me? That has affected me a lot of my life until I found out how to accept that it's over. I mean, I don't know what happened, but I figured he could tell me in the spirit, so I just go on.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to go on. You can, and this is great. People would say, well, what about if you stayed where I'm from Springfield, Mass? What about if this turn happened in Springfield? What about if I moved to Florida and this happened? So there's so many twists and turns in your life, but you have to know you are where you're supposed to be right now. And you can't change the past. We all talk about the past and what it could have looked like and how it could have been and who you could have been with, but you can't change the past. You're here now. So you need to, and I think that's another way to accept. You need to be in the here and now. You need to be mindful of what you're doing, what you're saying, how you're acting. Again, if you think of maybe the people that have already transcended, you don't want to be in a place where you're like, I didn't do everything I planned on doing for a while now, I guess because I'm so okay with death. I used to read all these articles about older people and the things when they got later on in their life and they weren't able to do it. They would say, man, I wish I did this, this, and this, and this. That's why I keep a bucket list. That's why I try to do these things that I believe is my purpose. Because when I close my eyes or when I'm not able to speak, move, or do the things that I can do now, I can say, I did it, done, I'm good.
Right. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely want to feel like you did something in your lifetime,
Did something on your purpose, on your person, what you always wanted to do, not what anybody else wanted to do. Right now, Gianni wants to be this, that, and the third. I'm just hoping he carries out his purpose.
Yeah.
I mean, I know my purpose was to be a therapist forever from high school. I could think of my social worker that played a big part. That's grief too. I was in foster care. But with that, look where I am now. Look at all the experiences I have. Look how many people I impact. So I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful that I had that purpose in my mind and I completed my purpose 100% to say that I was able to impact the way I was able to impact. And I know I changed people's minds and changed people's lives.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
And I heard you was talking about the guy that used to drink, that would drink whenever he was grieving real bad or whatnot.
Mhm.
I tried that. I tried that from when me and my kid's mother, we separated, and I lost, my kids basically. So I would try to drink and do drugs, stay high, whatever I had to do to get over that. And then the grief just kept stacking on top of each other. Just kept getting deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And the deeper I got, the more I drank, the more I did drugs. For over 20 years, I did that. I did it every day. And I never was able to get over it, never was able to heal until I actually sober-minded, clear-minded, with the focus of wanting to get better. Until I wanted to get better, it was virtually impossible. The only thing I was doing was masking it. But the same problems would arise again every day, or the same grief. Once I was able to not do a drunken cry and able to do a real sincere cry, that's when I started healing. And that wasn't until 4 or 5 years ago. So I'm not a pro at this. I'm not a professional. I don't know anybody who is, except these people over here.
No.
But I just like to keep it real, keep it 100.
And I know he tries to give me all these props, but I'm still Hasina. I'm just Hasina. I have this experience, I have this education, but even before the experience and the education, it was always something in me. So when it's in you, it's in you. But I'm still Hasina.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
That's it.
I just know that everything a person goes through is to make them stronger. And God would put the situation and the people in place for you to get your head. I mean, out of all the women in the world, me and all the grief that I've been through, I haven't even told y'all a quarter of the grief that I've been through in my life. And for me to meet her, it had to be God sent. Because it takes a special person to handle someone like me.
Me too.
Yeah.
Easy.
Hey, but love is.
Love is.
Love is.
All right, babe. I think we should end it.
Yeah, I think
So.
they got enough.
All right, love is.
Love is.
What do we
Like, share, subscribe.
There it is.
Bam.
Later.